punches, die cuts, and stamps. Oh my! Today we take a look at punches, dies, and how to combine them with your stamp sets. So tune in on this episode of Designing with Elaine. So Stampin' Up! Has a couple ways to cut out the images that they have in their stamp sets. Some stamp sets are just stamp sets, and what you have to do is what they call fussy cutting. So you would actually have to cut around the image with your scissors. Other sets have punches that punch out one or two items within that set. This will punch out a tulip and a leaf, but the others you would have to fussy cut. And then some come with an array of die cuts, little metal stencils, if you will, and they match your image and allow you to cut out that shape. So there's one for the raccoon, there is one for the mouse, there's one for the squirrel, and then in this case you get some for the balloons. You get extras sometimes as well. You get 4 different flowers, you get a little bit of grass, a bow, things that aren't necessarily stamped, but it gives you extra options. Here you have a speech bubble, so you can actually fit in thank you or happy birthday in those as well, which is also kind of cool. So first I'm going to look at the punches, because punches are a little bit different. If you look at the bottom of the punch, if you use this little button here, it'll actually open the punch and make it able to cut paper. And if you push it together and push back down, it closes it for storage. So we want it open. But if you take a look, you'll see that the leaf and the flower are in a particular order. So if you were to just stamp and you wanted the flower and then you were going to do the leaves, it might be a little bit hard to cut them out without wasting paper. So sometimes what you can do is you can take your piece of paper and you can actually make a template. So you stick it right in the top, right like this. I usually do mine just so it's kissing the bottom, so it's on the paper, but I'm saving paper, so there it's still not quite right. Pop it down a little bit and then go ahead and give it a punch. Now, if you punch too fast, it'll pop these out. So sometimes people will turn it over and punch. It really just depends on your personal preference. But now we have a little template that we can use when we line up our stamps. And that way we know that they'll be lined up in such a way that they can be punched out and we won't be wasting paper. So let's get our little thing here. All right, and we'll set up our little template on our paper, and we'll get our timeless tulips. Now, you can see that this is a photopolymer set. The photopolymer is clear rubber as opposed to the red rubber, which is really cool because then you can see your image underneath. So if you make a mistake, it's a little bit easier to line it up. You can also line up the words right where you want them because you can see through. So it's actually pretty handy. You can also see that when you use certain colors, it will stain the photopolymer. This won't come off on any other project. It just now makes it the pink flower. So we pull back the plastic, we'll peel off our stamp, and you can see they have nice little images to tell you kind of how they're supposed to fit on there. We'll get our little block. We'll set, actually let's get the D block here. And what you can actually do is set it up in your little template. So if we turn the stamp upside down, this is the image size. We turn it upside down, we can place it in our little stencil. We'll grab the proper leaf, And we can place that upside down in our stencil as well, just like so. Then we can pop our block right on top of it, push down, and that rubber is going to stick right to the block. So now we have something that will match the template. So when we stamp, we'll be able to cut it out correctly. So what you can do is you can either mask the leaf if you don't want the leaf to be a color, or you can just carefully stamp around. So we're going to use Granny Apple Green for the leaf, and we're going to make a yellow tulip. We're going to do Mango Medley to start. So we can open our stamp pad with the green. Now, Granny Apple Green and Mango Melody are relatively new stamps for me, stamp pads. So we're just going to ink it up carefully. And then we can do a test just to make sure. Now, you can see how my image didn't fully come out. That's because it wasn't flat on the table. The table's a little bit warped, so the ink actually stays on the tulip. So what you can do for that is you can actually have something underneath it that is going to give it pressure. A lot of people use foam pads for that. It gives it even pressure and gets all of that out. You can see I inked my leaf a little bit. You can also find where on the table it's going to ink the best. So let's carefully ink up the flower. I'm not getting the leaf on there at all. The leaf will go over here, and that yellow that I got on it isn't going to be a problem because I stamped it off. So we're carefully going to get just the leaf. Now the paper's a little bit thicker, so it should work on the table. And then I'm just going to firmly press on it, like so. And we missed the end a little bit. So I can kind of try and line it up and just stamp that little bottom end piece. Oh, it did the same for the green. Let's get that little green, line up that leaf, and just press the bottom on there. There we go. Now we have a full leaf and a full flower. I'm going to stamp or close my stamp pads real fast because I know me and I am likely to get my fingers or hands in them. So let's do that. We'll bring back in our punch. And now, because we used our stencil to line them up, now we can line them up we can line them up in the punch, and we can punch it out. And now we have a green flower and a mango tulip. Perfect. And if it's not lined up quite correctly and part of the white is bigger than you'd like, you can always go back in with your snips or your scissors and just give that a little bit of a trim. And that's going to work with any ink color, any flower. Here's one I did a while ago, just a different color, but use the same technique. If you just want the flowers, then you can angle the paper so that the flower's covered. You can kind of see how there you're missing some. You can go over until everything is covered, and then you'll just punch out the flower. That can work. You can slide the paper in from the other side to get just the leaf, but usually you end up you know, getting some extra pieces in there. Now, if you punched in advance, if you said, I want 10 tulips, and you punched all your tulips in advance, well, what you would find is that with the photopolymer, you can line it up. You can see through the stamp so that it's easy to line up. However, it's going to be a little bit hard to match that small of a space. And I'll show you what happens when you do. So again, I'm going to leave the leaf out. We're going to just kiss this to that. All right, so now I go to stamp my image. I can see through the block. Can line it up, line it up. We'll press it on the paper. Get that image nice. Go to lift up, and now my paper is stuck because it's a small image. So you can tear it off, but as you see, it shifted a little bit when I went to tear it off. So it's easier to mess up the design by doing it that way than it is to stamp and then punch out. It just works out a little bit better. And that's how you use a punch. Next, we'll focus on die cuts.